for the Victor O'Schindler Builders Risk Program. Really do appreciate you taking the time out. We're going to take a little time today, and we're going to talk about some economic trends. We're going to talk about things that would impact builders risk, and in particular, residential construction, commercial construction. We will kind of have a countrywide view of this. I'll spend a little bit of time on some regional issues, but for the most part, this is the U.S. as a whole. And I think it's interesting too, because I spent a fair amount of time studying the data, and you try to remove the emotions because we all read this stuff and get emotional. So a lot of this is just data. And then there will be some speculation on my part. So you can all write it down, and 12 months from now, we'll get together and you can see how accurate I was. But a lot of these trends that we talk about today have been going on for several years, and they're just going to continue. So without further ado, we're going to talk about economic trends and how it impacts the builder's risk marketplace. So, oops, paused. What was that? Don't know what that is, guys. Jillian, do you know what that is?
I don't see what you're referring to.
So something is open. Hang on a second. Give me a minute, guys. No.
Oh, I can't see.
Escape. It's down there.
Okay, let's just try it. Yeah, that should take care of it.
Is that good?
Yes. I don't know
Okay.
what slide you were on.
Right there.
Okay, sorry about that.
All right, sorry about that, guys. So we're a glitch in the technology. I guess maybe that's one of the trends for 2019. So let's spend a second just talking about the forecast. First of all, the way we divide the construction market up is into three categories. First of all, residential 1 to 4 family detached, ground up new construction. That is a big piece of the marketplace, and we'll talk about that. Just to give you an idea too, that the projections, well, for 2018, single family housing was off a little bit countrywide, 4 or 5% off the previous year. And all indications are in 2019, single family will probably be off a little bit. The number one factor that affects new housing is interest rates. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what I think is going to happen to interest rates. We all have an opinion on that. But it's safe to say that, though they will fluctuate a little bit. But having said that, new housing is still relatively strong, nowhere near the issues we had back in 2006 to 2008. They're still projecting over 800,000 single-family homes being built in the United States. So it's still a relatively healthy market, even if it is off a little bit from the year before. Multifamily is a completely different story. We're expecting another 5% growth in multifamily. For those of you around the country, I'm sure as you drive home from work, you're seeing the apartment complexes being built, the condominiums being built, certain parts of the country, the Southeast, the West Coast. So multifamily continues to be a very strong part of the marketplace. It's probably 40% of all the residential type building is multifamily now. So we'll see more of that in 2019. And the final category is commercial expenditures. And one way that I've always looked at that is I look at a report by the Census Bureau that's called the values put in place. And just to give you an idea, values put in place, residential is about 42% of the total values put in place in the United States, which is those first two categories. And the third category is non-residential, and that's 58% of the market. And when I look at that, it too is relatively flat year over year. So 2017 and 2018, the values put in place were about the same. And that's what they're predicting for 2019 to follow the same pattern. So I guess to sum all of this up, what they're projecting for 2019 is kind of more of the same. Pretty much what we've had the last 2 years, which is not a booming construction industry, but not a recession industry either. So somewhere close to where we've seen. Fair enough. So let's talk about some trends in construction, and I'll weave in a little bit of comments about builder's risk and particularly our line of business and what we talk about. First of all, green technology. We all know what green technology is, and that is just going to become more and more a bigger part of the marketplace. There is an endorsement the builders risk carriers use called the Green Builder Endorsement. I would recommend you delve into that a little bit. For the sake of time today, I'm not going to delve into it, but there are some unique coverages available that are usually, sometimes the builders don't ask about them, but you need to ask. If you are dealing with a builder that uses this type of technology, they have some unique exposures and risks. And I would say it's a big part of the industry and just getting bigger all the time. So a lot of this is using recycled materials and how they dispose of those materials. It's just going to continue on. Simple as that. Another trend that we're starting to see is modular or prefabricated projects. Last year, about 7% of all single-family homes were modular. You're going to see that increase for a lot of reasons. We'll go through that. Very unique exposures on the modular construction. Some of this involves transit. How do they transport these materials? How do you cover that? Another thing is just how long does it take to build these things? How secure are they? How are they tied to the foundation? There's a lot of underwriting concerns around modular housing, but you're going to see more and more of that in 2019. Something we see in the southeastern United States is a lot of tilt-up construction. So even though it's not modular, it is a form of prefabricated, and they now build 5- and 6-story office buildings tilt-up. So once again, from unique exposures as far as builder's risk, talk to your underwriter, make sure that all the proper endorsements are attached and that you've covered the exposures for these type of contractors. And the reason being that they're using these things mainly is cost, cost on labor, cost on materials. The quicker you can build something, the less impact you have from weather events. And the thing is, building repetitive structures over and over again, just like anything, you become more efficient. So a lot of it always boils back to cost. So be it time, labor, materials, whatever a builder can do, that's what they're going to do to reduce those costs. So I would say stay tuned. You're going to see a lot more of that. Increased material cost. We've seen that across the board, and you can see here from iron and steel, all the steel products used in residential or commercial, softwood lumber pricing going up, could be because some of the fires have taken place. But the cost of materials is increasing at a rapid pace. So once again, that increases the value of the home. It's pretty simple, the value of these projects that are being built. So just pay very close attention. We've had a few webinars in the past on how to calculate insurance to value, but factor that in. So whatever they built last year, whatever they're building this year, it's going to cost them more, both specifically from a material standpoint. And I think when you sit down with a builder, they're going to understand that. So just keep in mind co-insurance and how that impacts not insuring the proper values. And I would say just in general, your relationship with your insureds. You want to insure things for the proper amount. One thing we do at Victor O'Center and Builders Risk is we will help you calculate. We look at the cost per square foot. We have a pretty good idea around the country. It does vary dramatically. It's a little more expensive to build something in New York than it is in Keokuk, Iowa, for example. So, but we'll work with you on that and make sure you get the right amount in the beginning. And I would say, as I said, the trend will continue as long as there's decreased supply. And so this is all the construction is supply and demand. So the demand is still there, which is a good thing. The bad thing is there's just less supply, so the cost is going to go up. So you're going to see more of that continue through 2019. Decreased labor force. I was reading an article earlier this week, and this was from the CEO World Conference. And they asked 1,300 CEOs that attend this conference, what are the major threats to the economics of the world in 2019? And one of the third largest threat, they said, availability of skilled labor. So that's not only a concern in the United States, it's a concern everywhere, but in the construction industry in particular, you might have the demand. There's people that want to build these projects, maybe even have the funding in place. You can get the materials, but if you can't get enough labor, skilled labor, the project comes to a halt. And one thing that we've seen in 2018 is because of this, one of the reasons it's the length of projects has actually grown. So I spent another webinar, we had a webinar on how you determine the proper term to write these things. But if it took 6 months to build a house last year, it might take 7 or 8 months this year, simply because of the lack of labor. And that is regionalized, but it's interesting, in the areas that are growing the fastest are the areas that have the biggest shortage of labor. So just keep that in mind. And on builder's risk, it's, don't write a project for a shorter amount of time than it needs to be, because then you have to ask for extensions. And it's a better way to do it. I'd probably add a few months onto the projects. That's the so what of this. It just becomes, and that's just all labor, and specifically the skilled laborers, the interior trim carpenters, the concrete finishers, the steel workers. There's just less of them. So we're going to see that trend continue in 2019. I will say a little tip for the younger ones out there that are looking for something to do. I'm sure there's a lot of work out there for people that want to work in this industry. It's a world according to Jeff Benson there. Sustainability. Let's talk just a second about that. It's a little different than green building technology, because the first one is kind of abstract as far as making it a better place. But what they're going to do is focus on like smaller changes to projects. You're going to see commercial buildings with skylights that utilize natural light, so you can augment the lighting. So that doesn't sound like a big change, but let's just say you reduce the electric bill by 5% in a commercial structure. That's sustainability. Solar already is becoming more and more popular. We run a lot of projects that have pretty extensive solar arrays on top of the buildings. We see some solar fields being built, a whole separate field of solar power. So you're going to see more and more of that in 2019. These solar panels are coming down in cost, which is a good thing. So it becomes more economically feasible. So this is a trend that will continue. So that's sustainability. Technology. So we all know about technology, but even the building industry now is really becoming affected by this. We see things like everything being optimized for modular devices. One of the things I was reading about was augmented reality. Think about when you go to buy a home, you could actually, you could put some goggles on and you could look at what the home would look like when it's done. You can even tell the builder, well, I'd really like to have, another bathroom, or I'd like to have the kitchen bigger. So they can do that through the use of augmented reality almost in real time and give you the additional cost to make these changes. So you can see where that changes the whole process of building a house. The good news for this would be efficiency. So it's going to allow them to order the right amount of materials. Hopefully it will just improve the whole process. Kind of an exciting time to be around to do these things. Drones. We've already seen the drones affect the claim industry. You don't have adjusters climbing around on top of roofs anymore. Just send the drone up there and take a picture. But it's the same thing for builders too. As the project's being built, maybe almost like a risk management thing, but you're going to see more and more drones used in that. Definitely for developers as they're thinking about developing a piece of property, the aerial pictures and things that they can use with the drones. I can even envision now from a security standpoint, as you're building a commercial project, you'll probably see drones that are involved in security. So that's another time, it's an exciting time to see where all that goes, but that definitely is a trend that's going to continue. Let's go back to economics just for a second. So total housing starts rise will likely climb in the next few months. So on a month-to-month basis, we think we'll see a few increases into the spring, but overall relatively flat. But we will see pockets of growth. We've seen Florida, Texas growing dramatically in the last couple of years. We're starting to see parts of the West Coast that continue to grow. So I guess when someone says something about housing, you got to be very careful. It could be growing in one area and very depressed in another area. So without that being said, anytime new housing is slower, what do people do? I can't afford to buy a new house, so I'm going to fix up my old house. I talked to an agent in Framingham, Massachusetts yesterday, and he said he has builders that are buying ranch-style houses, make sure they're well built. They raise the roof, put a new floor on, make it a 2-story house. He said it's going on every day. So you see more and more of that in some of the areas that maybe they're not building as many new houses. So from the standpoint of builder's risk, renovations in itself or more exposure doesn't mean you can't get proper coverage. It's just harder and a little more expensive. And then also, if you're going to do structural changes to a project, that does create some unique exposures from a builder's risk standpoint. So we think those trends will continue, specifically in those parts of the country, maybe the older parts of the country, more and more remodeling. The unemployment rate, we talked about skilled labor and labor not being available. That's because, there's jobs, for everybody. So that's going to be a situation where, even though it sounds good, it is going to delay projects. Probably even some projects won't get started. We've had a number of projects in the last several months that, we quoted on them. We thought we were going to write the coverage, and then the project was delayed, either a lot of times because they didn't have enough labor, they couldn't get the materials, so there's always a reason, but we have seen more and more projects being delayed, the starts being delayed. So I think you'll probably see some more of that. So just factor that in when you're talking to your contractors or the owners that are developing their own houses. A few more economic trends. They're projecting inflation to be up a little bit more in 2019. Not a dramatic increase, but maybe more of the same of what we've been having. Interesting enough, though, they are predicting business spending to be up and retail sales continue to grow at a 4% pace. So I guess the so what of all that is, they're not projecting any major upheaval in 2019. Now, you heard that here first. Could it happen? Absolutely. But for the most part, in housing and commercial, in the small commercial market, we think the trends are very solid and should continue along the path that they're on now. That was kind of the world according to Jeff Benson quickly. I think it's still 2019 represents a great opportunity for builder's risk. Because I said earlier, they're building a lot of structures out there across the country. I travel a lot, and everywhere I go, I seem to see a lot of buildings being built. People are working, so that's good. Consumer spending is up, that's good. We do have some challenges. On the challenge side would be labor and materials. On the plus side would be the technology. Builders are just getting smarter all the time. Sustainability, I think, is important. The green builder is a big deal. So just to wrap it all up, that was kind of the trends we see occurring in 2019. I greatly appreciate your time today. Jillian, you want to open this up to questions, see if we have any questions?
Absolutely. The first one came in actually really early. So this was, does this include the flooding rebuilds and demand surge that came in when you were talking about the statistics for the year?
That's a good question, because we have a catastrophic event, and as terrible as those events are, on the upside is you got to rebuild all that stuff. So be it a fire, a flood, a hurricane, some of our biggest movements in builders risk over the years have been the rebuilding of these catastrophic events. And yeah, those numbers did include that, but I would say it's very regionalized. So for example, in California, there's going to be a lot of rebuilding in California. It's been a little slow. Environmental impacts of the fires, it's hard to get the land certified. It's hard to find labor, materials, they have that, but it is starting. North Carolina, they've already started rebuilding. We've been doing pretty well in North Carolina. So yeah, the answer to the question is those are great opportunities for agents that live in that area. I would definitely be tuned into builder's risk because there's going to be a lot of opportunities.
That's the only question at this time.
The only question. I like that. You're all stunned. Well, I greatly appreciate your time today, and we have another one of these scheduled. Our next one is going to be diving deeper into the home building industry and exactly what a home builder is. And so I look forward to talking to you in the coming months, and hopefully.
Jeff, would you?
Oh, another question.
another question. What kind of frame rates are you getting?
I like that. So what kind of frame rates are we getting? So once again, the rates vary dramatically, from the highest rates in the country being in South Florida to some of the lowest rates in the country in the Midwest. So if you had a national rate on residential frame construction, it's right around 20 cents per 100 building materials. And now the interesting thing about frame construction is as the values grow, the rate grows because there's a lack of capacity. So I've seen rates approaching 30 cents on the higher valued frame projects. And then the rates in protection class 9 and 10 have continued to increase. I think what you've seen in California, a lot of those fires damaged buildings that were in unprotected areas. So I think you're going to see a further increase in frame rates in PC 9 and 10. So, I mean, that's kind of it in a nutshell. I think that gives you kind of a general idea. Hopefully that answers your question. And I'm always available in my contact information. Let's see, where is it? There it is. So anybody that's on the webinar, anybody, give me a call. We can talk about these things. If you have an individual risk you want me to look at, by all means, send it to me or Donna. We're here to help you write the business. So I greatly appreciate your time and look forward to working with you.